This is a great one to watch. Back when Ben Shapiro really started making airwaves in the online conversation space, I think there's 3 classic moments that contributed to his rise that deserve to be looked at in retrospect. I'm sure that for a lot of people, these viral clips were probably their first intro to Ben, but there's subject matter in these clips that are still relevant today I want to discuss before I tell you how. Watch this timeless yet oddly hilarious interaction between Ben and trans activist Zoey Tur.
Being brave is being yourself, and being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Did she deserve the award?
65?
Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's
that's
her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
I don't agree with that. I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train. She wants to be called she. I'm going to call her she. I just have a problem with the message and the messenger.
You have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
well, no,
what are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well, but wait. To be fair, you're actually being kind of rude.
You know what's absolutely crazy? It's not even the fact that Ben was literally grabbed by the neck and threatened, or the absurdity of the entire debate premise. It's the rest of the panelists, as well as Dr. Drew himself, simply glossing over the fact that someone just threatened egregious bodily assault and tried to make it about Ben supposedly offending Zoe. And by the way, most of Dr. Drew's episodes are filmed in California, and threatening someone with physical violence actually violates the state laws, including the California Penal Code 422C. It states, and I quote, "Anyone who willfully makes a threat to commit a crime that can result in great bodily injury or to someone with the intent that their statement is to be taken as a threat, even if there is no intent to actually carry it out, which was specific to the person threatened, an immediate prospect of execution of the threat, causing a victim to be in fear of their safety or immediate family." That's how serious it is, because you should have expected the entire tone of the debate to change the moment a physical threat of violence is made, but obviously nothing happened, and we were left with a clip that was frustrating as it is confusing. Ben's sarcastic underreaction to the blatant threat actually became a running joke on the internet at the time, parodied even by people including Steven Crowder. But for Ben Shapiro in the start, any attention was good attention, and it helped catapult him to the spotlight faster than most could hope for. His conversation with Piers Morgan around 10 years ago on gun control was one such moment that is just unforgettable even today.
So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue, because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, you know, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument. And we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
I've made it very clear what I want to do, which is exactly what Mark Kelly wants to do. And in fact, rather than address
let's talk about that.
Rather than address your comments to me about standing on the graves of children at Sandy Hook, you can address them to Mark Kelly, because he agrees with everything that I've been saying, because he feels the same way, as does his wife. They're gun owners. They both respect the Second Amendment of the Constitution. That is the reason, Mr. Shapiro, And you can smirk at me and you can laugh at me.
I'm not smirking.
And you can accuse me of standing on the graves of dead children.
And being a bully, yes.
But that is the reason that people like me and Mark Kelly and Gabrielle Giffords want to have assault weapons like that removed from civilian hands.
Your passion on the issue
point.
doesn't really justify the rationale for why you want to ban assault weapons, but not handguns.
You don't understand why we want to remove the preferred weapon of choice, these killing machines, from the hands of deranged young men.
Perhaps Ben came out a bit unnecessarily strong on that one, but it did make for one of the most heated conversations on gun control we've ever seen. Second probably to Piers' spat with Alex Jones, but there's a core to this discussion that's actually true, which is that the gun control debate can very often be diluted by strong emotion or reactions to events, and to a degree it's understandable. When you look at Ben Shapiro's own stance on the gun debate, you realize that the strict pro-Second Amendment worldview was bound to clash with someone like Piers Morgan, who clearly coming at it from a more emotional angle. In the aftermath of any tragic incident or rampage involving guns, you'll often see Ben Shapiro come out and claim that no amount of gun control can prevent a madman from ending people's lives if he wants to, because guns don't kill people, people do. But this conversation had created a rift between Piers and Ben for nearly a decade before they finally met up and cleared the air once again. I think this exchange was one that could have flared up quickly if not for Piers' relatively calm response that does deserve to be commended. Moving from gender to guns, Ben, and another hot button issue to poke in America, and that's race and racial disparity.
Things that I wanted to share with you. According to Pew Research, the net worth of white families in 2013 was $141,000. For black families, it was $11,000, even less than the $19,000 it was in 2007. According to economist Edward Wolf of the University of New York, excluding vehicles and other durables, the median black family worth is just $1,700, while 40% of black families have zero or negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't... You know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
That's honestly got to be frustrating. The idea that broad and one-dimensional statistical comparisons can be used to draw inaccurate conclusions seems to be a common problem in our political discourse today. That's exactly what you see with things like the gender pay gap refusing to let go of people's collective psyche. Of course, racial disparities exist, but maybe every disparity does not point to discrimination, and if it does, there's no one in their right mind that wouldn't oppose it. Ben Shapiro has an uncanny ability to paralyze his opponent's train of thought with one simple request, that's to particularize and specify the idea rather than leaving it hazy, broad, and undefined, like the phrase institutional racism. And unfortunately, with the kind of identity-obsessed political culture that we live in, Ben Shapiro's race and wealth status doesn't win him much favor from the other side, who's often just perceived to be speaking from a place of privilege. And that's why I think all three of these clips are so interesting to look back at. They don't just show Ben Shapiro's own political and rhetorical evaluation over the years, but also serve as a window into how our sensitivities around these subjects have changed and heightened. When that happens, perhaps someone who's a bit of a provocateur like Ben Shapiro can find ways to get a reaction out of people rather than a calm rebuttal, and he's inevitably going to become relevant for it. Being a provocateur isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it can even be an art. Showing people the absurdity of an idea by poking fun or putting difficult questions to them can be a great way of separating ideas that have substance and those that don't. Right now, Ben is one of the few people on the online conservative space that have mastered the art.